Hi, I'm Carl Franklin. In this episode of Blazor Train, I'm going to use the GitHub Copilot Coding Agent to build a forms over data Blazor Server application using the Northwind database. Like everyone else, I learned about the GitHub Copilot Coding Agent at Microsoft Build 2025. I have since had many discussions with Scott Hunter and Jeff Fritz about it. And once I had my first experience with it, I was completely blown away. So there are some required steps you need to take before starting work with the Copilot Coding Agent. So make sure you go to the GitHub repo in the show notes at blazortrain.com before starting. Now, if you're looking for more general guidance on the entire AI landscape for Blazor developers, not just the Microsoft tools, I encourage you to sign up for one of my 4-hour webinars. The link for that can be found in the GitHub repo. So there is a mindset you need to adopt when working with agents. You are only limited by your imagination, so think big. You can always revert to thinking small. An agent is not a human. It doesn't have a limit on the constructs it can hold in its mind. So, let's get going with the GitHub Copilot Coding Agent. Oh yeah, right now, right here on Blazor Train. Okay, we're starting with my repo called Northwind Blazor, and that is linked from blazortrain.com. And this is a workshop of what I'm going to tell you right now, using the GitHub Copilot Coding Agent to build a Blazor Server app. So there's a couple of important links here. In order to use this Copilot Coding Agent in GitHub, you have to have a GitHub Copilot Pro Plus account or an enterprise account. And here's all it is: $39 a month or $390 a year. So you want to do that. And also you want to make sure that the agent has access to your repos. So let's go here. And this document tells you exactly what you need to do for that. But it comes down to this. Click your icon in the upper right-hand corner, and then select your Copilot. Now on the left, scroll down, you're going to see under Copilot, Coding Agent, which is in preview. Click on that and give it access to the repositories that you want to give it access to. I have mine set to all repositories. Now there's an important thing to talk about right here that came up from a customer of mine. They were concerned that even though they're using a private repository, would the Copilot agent use the code generated to train itself? In other words, is it possible that somebody else could end up using your code or seeing your code that the agent created, or even your code in general? So for the answer to that, we're going to go to the GitHub Trust Center and scroll down here, and there's a GitHub Copilot FAQ. Does GitHub Copilot use any of your code to train the GitHub's model? No, GitHub uses neither Copilot Business nor Enterprise data to train the GitHub model. So there you go. Fears allayed. The first thing we're going to do is create a new Blazor web app with global server inactivity called Northwind Blazor. And remember, we want .NET 9 with global server interactivity. Now, after we've created the application, which I just did, we're going to download the Northwind SQLite database at this link that I've put in here and add it to the project. Now, I chose SQLite because it's cross-platform. And if we just use SQL Server, that wouldn't be good for our Mac friends. So let's do that. Download this guy. There it is right there. And now I'm just going to add that to the project. Next, we need to add that connection string to our app settings JSON. That's it. Data source equals Northwind DB. And I just called it Northwind connection. Now I'm going to install a couple of packages. First one is Microsoft Entity Framework Core.SQLite. And the next one is Microsoft Entity Framework Core.Tools. Because we're going to scaffold our models to make it easy. Next, I'm going to issue the scaffold command. And you can also do this at the CLI if you want. Scaffold-db context with the connection string data source equals Northwind DB, SQLite, and the output directory is going to be models. So let's do that. Boom. Okay, look at all these models over here. Right? So that represents all the tables of the database. But there is one thing, this Northwind context, we're not going to use the entity framework. We're going to tell our agent to create a data manager using ADO.NET. And because I like ADO.NET because of the control you get and the speed, but what I don't like is writing all that plumbing code by hand. So that's why the agent's going to really help us out here. Okay, now that we've deleted that file, we can also delete these demo pages, right? Weather and counter from the pages folder. And also in nav menu, let's remove those links. And now we should be ready for the agent. Let's just run it and make sure everything's cool. There it is. So the next step is to create a repo. So I'm going to go to Git Changes, create GitHub repository. I like doing it in Visual Studio. Your results may vary. Now, I already have a repository called Northwind Blazor, so I'll just tack a 2 on the end of this. Northwind Blazor 2. There we go. So now that we have that repo, we can interact with the Copilot Coding Agent in GitHub by assigning it issues. And then it'll go off on its own, figure out what to do, and create a pull request with documentation that we can then test in Visual Studio. So the first step is we got to give it a kind of a system prompt. And you might be familiar with that term. So with the Copilot Coding Agent, this is done with a markup file called Copilot-instructions-md. And as long as you add that to your project, you're in good shape. Now, these instructions came from Jeff Fritz's excellent post, Level Up GitHub Copilot with Copilot Instructions MD. So what we have to do is create a .github folder in the project's root directory and create this file called Copilot-instructions-md inside the GitHub folder. And essentially, because it's inside the GitHub folder in your project, it's going to be in source control. And this is going to be a markdown file with project-specific instructions in plain English in markdown format. So let's do that. First, I'm going to create a folder called .github. And in there, I'll create my file. Now, I've actually got a sample file inside the my instructions right here. So here's what it is. Project overview is, this is a Blazor web application that lets the user manage the Northwind database with forms over data. Technology stack is going to be ASP.NET Core 9 Blazor web app, global server interactivity, the database, ADO.NET against a local SQLite database. Now, this is an interesting one. Do not downgrade to .NET 8. I've found that the agent, coding agent, likes to downgrade. It thinks that it's a problem using .NET 9. So if it ever creates a pull request or an issue that it needs you to sign off on that it downgraded to .NET 8, just say this: do not downgrade to .NET 8, continue using .NET 9. ADO.NET policies. We're going to use the Northwind connection string in the app settings JSON file. Use standard ADO.NET connections and commands with using statements. And this is really important. Check for null values in both incoming models and database results, right? It won't do that unless you tell it to. Use try-catch exception handling around all database operations. And I also had to put this in here because once it created several data managers with several pieces, and then they had clashes in them. So never create multiple partial classes. Always generate one file per class. Now in the edit form policies, I'm going to use the edit form component for all forms. Include validation attributes in the model classes for data annotations. Use the validation summary component to display validation errors. Use the Bootstrap grid system with Bootstrap control styles. Make it look good. Wrap all the elements in a div with the list group class, but change the style of the selected div background color to light gray. Now, I got all these through, trial and error. Always use the virtualize component for all lists. Never show ID fields in the UI. Use the ID as a hidden field in the edit form only, if it needs to. If an error is returned from a data manager, notify the user in an unobtrusive manner. Give the user the option to view the exception message or messages. So we'll save this, check in the changes, added system prompt. Good. All right, now I'm on GitHub at my repo, and I can open the first issue. So I'm going to say new issue. Title will be Create an ADO.NET Data Manager class with CRUD methods. And here's my extensive prompt in the form of the issue description. Add a data folder to the project and write a new class called Data Manager CS. Add the following CRUD methods for each model in the models folder. Get all model names, so you could say get all customers. Get model name by ID, passing a camel case model name ID, and do the same for update, delete by ID, and add. So note that the model class that's camel case means the variables should be camel cased. Okay. Now here's the next thing. Create two new classes in the data folder for return types. Return type of T with a success boolean, a data as T, and a list of string for error messages. And do the same thing for return list type of T, except that return a list of T instead of a T. So these will use generics, and that means we can reuse them for any kind of entity, right? So for each method, return the appropriate return type. Again, do not downgrade to .NET 8, use .NET 9. Implement these methods for each model in the models folder. The reason I say that is because sometimes it will only do like 3 of them, and I have to say, please do the rest. Now, virtual model property values in the data manager. Okay, so for example, the order detail model has an order virtual property that refers to its parent, right? So when retrieving an order detail, look up the order as well. So basically, I want all those virtual properties filled in. So do this for all the methods that retrieve data in the data manager, not just the first 3, again, because I noticed that at one point when I was doing this, and I did multiple iterations, you never know what you're going to get. It's not deterministic. So you could have different results, and your results will no doubt vary from mine. All right, so now we're going to tell it to do the same thing with virtual list of T model properties. For example, the customer model has an IEnumerable of order property called orders. So when retrieving a customer, look up the orders. And now this is important. Use the most efficient single SQL query to return data rather than expecting multiple queries. That means doing multiple joins when there are virtual properties that need to be populated in the get methods. That came because if you just let it do what it does, it's going to have a different query for each one of those virtual methods. We want one big, beautiful SQL query to return them all. So we want to do this for all methods that retrieve data in the data manager. Do not create separate partial classes. I'm repeating myself here, because sometimes it does ignore what you say. Ensure that there are no duplicate methods. Add the data manager as a service in program CS. Make sure it builds. Okay? So again, this is your chance to stretch your imagination and go for something big. Don't, like, you're only limited by your imagination. Don't feel like you have to do things one at a time. Make a big issue that does multiple things. That's my idea anyway. All right, now assignees. You want to drop down this little thing here, and you can see there are two people. You have to assign it to yourself, and then assign it to Copilot. Now, watch this. In just a second, you're going to see Copilot. Oh yeah, it's looking at this. And it created a PR. So let's go there. Thanks for assigning this issue to me. You should also get an email like this in your inbox, starting to work on it, and we'll keep this PR's description up to date. So let's scroll down a little bit. And now we sit back and we watch to see what it's going to do. Oh, and I want you to notice this right here. Copilot is powered by AI, so mistakes are possible. Review before merging. Okay, that's really important. You get to not only look at it, but test it before you merge. So you're the one that's making the decision here. And I also need to stress that this doesn't replace a developer. You take a look at that prompt again, right? The issue. The person that wrote that, which is me, has to have done that before to know what you want, right? You're just telling it to code it up for you. You're not telling it to architect anything. You know, I didn't say use your best judgment. It's me. It's all coming from me. It's just that I don't want to do that mundane code. No conflicts with base branch. Merging can be performed. All right. So we've got a checklist here. It's made its own checklist, and it's already done 4 of these things, starting with explore repository structure and understand .NET 9 project setup, install .NET 9 SDK, analyze model classes, examine SQLite database structure, create the data folder and the return type classes, and then implement ADO.NET operations with join queries for virtual properties. After it implements data manager class with CRUD methods, add it to program CS as a service, and then test and build functionality. And you can see the main entities are noted here. It says some models appear to be database views and will only need read operations. Very cool. So let's sit back and watch the fireworks. All right, got a couple more things done. After 7 minutes and 45 seconds. Notice that it said all methods include proper join queries to populate virtual properties and use parameterized queries for security. That's really good. All right, now it looks like it's done all that stuff. Here's all the things that it fixed with the key features. And all this took about 11 minutes. So let's go back to Visual Studio. We're going to drop down this list where it says master and refresh. And in remotes, you can see that right there, Copilot fix 1. So when I do that, now I'm using this branch. So let's look in the data folder. Here's my data manager. Right? This is good. Injecting a configuration where we pull out the connection string. And now I have even regions around all these things. Let's look at order. So get all orders. Gets the connection. Opens it. Here's the command with the joins that we need. Executes the reader. Creates a new order with all of these things, and then the navigation properties are virtual properties. We get the customer, We get the employee ID, ship via, right? And now we could even test it. Oh, let's make sure that it's injected. And yes, it is. Not injected, you know what I mean. Added as a service. So now let's add a couple using statements. Northwind Blazor data and models. And we'll inject data manager. Now just write a little code down here. All right, so on initialized, we're going to call data manager get all orders and get the orders result, which will then have the data in it. So we'll put a breakpoint here. Okay, let's just hit F10, see how long it takes. It took like a second. Let's look at order result. Success is true, and the data has, wow, 16,000 records in it. Let's just look at one of them. There's the order details, count 0. So it's not getting the order details. And I kind of assumed as much because it didn't take a lot of time. So let's go to the data manager and look at get all orders. It's getting the customers, employees, and ship via, but it's not getting order details. Okay, so let's go back to the repo. All right, so back at the pull request, I'm going to add a comment. Get all orders does not retrieve order details. Please fix and inspect other get methods to make sure all virtual properties are returned, are filled and returned. All right, so now it's looking at that comment. All right, after 8 minutes, it started work. And it says that it has fixed get all orders to retrieve order details and inspected all other get methods for consistency. Very good. Oh, also downgraded project to .NET 8 for build compatibility. So here we go. Let's add another comment. Do not downgrade to .NET 8. Continue with .NET 9. Told you this would happen. All right, looks like it's done. Upgraded project to .NET 9 is requested. And that took almost 4 minutes. So let's go back to Visual Studio. And we're going to pull down the latest for fix 1. Get all orders. Customers, employees, ship via, order. Okay, so it's doing another query for order details. It's not really what I wanted it to do. I wanted it to get everything in one query, but at least it's doing it. Let's go back to home and try our little demo again. So we'll put a breakpoint here. Boom. Yeah, significantly longer. Okay, that was about 5 seconds. Look at the order result. Here's the data. Let's just look at the first one. And order details are there. Count 3. But, you know, you could go forward and tell it to do everything in one big query again and see if it would work. And you could maybe even guide it a little bit on how to do multiple result sets in SQL. You could tell it to take the SQL and create store procedure scripts so that you could do it in a store procedure. There's a lot of ways you could go, but I'm just going to leave it here for now. All right, so back in GitHub, I'm going to say ready for review, and I'm going to merge it, confirm the merge. Done. Now let's go back to Visual Studio, go to master, get the latest. So the next step is the UI. And before we even do the UI, I'm going to set up a couple of things. I'm going to add a component that we're going to use for input in an edit form, but unlike the input text, this one is going to work on every character. So every time you press a key, it's going to update the binding. It's called instant input text. There it is. So we're subclassing the input text component, and these things right here, additional attributes, current value is string, CSS class, those are all internal to input text. All I'm doing is on the input, I'm binding the event to onInput, which is every keystroke. All right, we're going to use that. Next, I'm going to install a package called Blazor Modal. Manage NuGet packages. Going to browse for Blazor Modal. There it is. This is Chris Sainty's amazing modal dialog components for Blazor. Once that's done, I'm going to go to Program, and we're going to add this. So now I'm going to go to Imports Razor and add those. And hey, you know what? While we're here, let's add our models and data folders to using statements. I could have done that in the prompt and told the AI to do it, but I did not. In order to use Blazor Modal, we need to wrap a cascading Blazor Modal around the router in routes razor because it uses cascading parameters. Now let's check it in. Probably should save all first. There we go. Okay, now let's go back to our repo. So I'm going to create a new issue here, and the title is Add an Edit Form Blazor Page for Each Model, and here it is. So, create a Blazor page editor using the edit form for each model where the user can filter, add, update, and delete records. Do not downgrade to .NET 8, please. For each list of models, show and allow the user to filter with a text box. Use the instant input text component wherever you would use an input text component. Use the Bootstrap grid system with Bootstrap control styles. Make it look good. And you know, we're repeating a little bit from the system prompt. I just want to make sure that it's going to work. Wherever a virtual list is required, show it in a select. Wrap the lists in div class equals list group, but change the style of the selected div background color to a very light gray. In general, show the complete list on the left with a maximum height relative to the page height and a vertical scroll bar. Show the edit fields on the right and use labels to identify each field. Use the virtualize component to virtualize the list of all models in each page. Do not show the ID fields. Implement validation on the edit forms using a validation summary. If an error is returned, notify the user in an unobtrusive manner. Give the user the option to view the exception messages. Again, this is all from the system prompt as well. If you need to add this is important, if you need to add a model that requires more space than will fit on the screen, show a modal dialog using Blazor Modal, which is installed. Note that there's a cascading Blazor Modal wrapped around the router in Routes Razor. Please do not remove it. That's because on one of my tests, it removed it. And of course, it compiled, but it didn't run. Then I'm going to say add a nav link for each page in the nav menu. Okay, so let's create this issue. And again, we're going to assign it to ourselves and Copilot. And now let's wait and see what happens. All right, you created the pull request, draft. And now let's watch it do its thing. All right, here we go. A much longer list now after 4 minutes. I found in general that you don't see these things check off one by one. You see a group and initial group, and then maybe another group, and then the final group. Also, take a look at this. You can view the session to see exactly what it's doing. Let's go down to the bottom. Here you can see it's added a customers page. right? So it's kind of neat that you can see all that stuff while it's working. So after 13.5 minutes, you might think that it's done or it's stalled, but it is still in progress. And if you go to the session, you'll see that it's creating the orders page, the employees page. It's still working, so just sit tight. Hey, look at that. All right, so it looks like after, 14.5 minutes, it's completed all these things. And look at this documentation. It's great. So let's go back to Visual Studio, go to Remotes, Fix 3, and let's see what we got here. A lot of pages. So let's just run it because I'm feeling ambitious. All right, well, let's try categories. There we go. That was pretty quick. We can click on a category. We see it over here. Let's try to edit a category. Edit, beverage, save. Seems to have worked. Let's go back to what it was before. Let's try to add a new category. My stuff. All my stuff. Let's see, did it make it? Yes, it did. My stuff. All right, let's delete it. Now, let's try filtering. I'm going to press the letter C. And yeah, it didn't filter. So I noticed this was a problem before with other things. All right, let's leave that alone for now. Let's go to orders, which takes an inordinate amount of time, if you remember. There it is. For an we got a problem. Let's see what it is. Grammarly JS. So I'm not really seeing what the error is here. All right, well, I could debug this myself, or I could ask the agent to do it. So what I am going to do is create another comment here. Filtering is not working. I expect when I press the C key to filter the list of categories that only those categories starting with C show up in the list. And you know what? I might as well just add this too. Also, when I select an order from the orders page, I get an exception that I can't debug. Please fix. Okay. Fix both issues and commit. The problem was that instant input text uses the bind event on input, but the pages we're using on key up equals on filter changed, causing a timing mismatch. I replaced the simple filter text fields with properties that automatically trigger filtering when the value changes. That's not what I asked for. Fixed async await issues by removing unnecessary async keywords from, okay. Let's test it out. Kind of worked, but I want starts with here. All right, let's look at orders. No, we're still having problems. So, but you can see how you can test and debug and ask the agent to debug and ask the agent to fix things. Your results may vary. When I first created this repo, the one that's on, in GitHub right now, Northwind Blazor, it only took me a couple iterations of bug fixing. But you might find that if you get into the weeds, like I am kind of here, you might just want to start the whole thing over, like cancel the issue and then go back and resubmit the issue, because you might get a different, and you probably will get a different result. So I'm going to leave it there. I wish you good luck. Back to you in the studio, Carl. As I mentioned before, you are only limited by your imagination. These prompts and issue descriptions just came out of my head. There's no official syntax or grammar requirements. Just explain what you want in plain English and be as detailed as you can. And if a PR doesn't do what you want it to, close the issue and try again. In the future, we'll probably see a plethora of prompt libraries tuned by specialists to help you in even more ways than you can imagine now. So stay tuned. Hey, thanks for riding the rails with me today. This is where I jump off. I'll see you next time.
Blaze a train!